This is the Leadercast podcast, helping you be a leader worth following.
Hey, Leadercast community. This month, we've partnered with Colorado Christian University to bring you content related to innovation. Take the next steps in your leadership journey by advancing in your education at Colorado Christian University. CCU Online offers flexible online degree programs designed for working adults. To see how CCU can help you reach your academic and professional goals, visit ccu.edu/leadercast to learn more. Hey everyone, and welcome to the 50th episode of the Leadercast podcast. I am Angie Ahrens, Vice President of Operations for Leadercast, and I'm excited to talk about innovation, creativity, and leadership with you today. For many people, change is hard. We've been experiencing this for weeks, and adaptability is what is getting people through it. But also during this time, we're seeing that disruption can allow for creativity and innovation. In business and leadership, we've seen it time and time again. And as a leader, we need to ask ourselves, how do you motivate and inspire the creatives in your business? And what does a French-Canadian circus, Cirque du Soleil, have anything to do with it? Our guest, Vital Germain, will provide insight to all these questions and more. Vital is a master of mindset, inspiring growth and transformation as a speaker, coach, and author. He designs forward-thinking corporate cultures that are able to pivot, disrupt standards, and achieve extraordinary performance. And as a previous cast member of Cirque du Soleil's show, Mystere, will speak about examples through this innovation process. So let's get started. Hello, Vital. Thank you so much for joining us today. How are you?
I'm doing great, Angie. Thanks for having me. It's an absolute pleasure. Very excited to be on this platform with you.
We appreciate it. We have a lot to cover, so I'm just going to kind of jump right in. You are the author of multiple books, including Innovation Mindset. I recently read it, lots of great content. There's a lot of ground to cover, so let me ask you, how do you define innovation?
Oh, good question straight off the bat. First of all, thank you for taking the time to read the book. How do I define innovation? I think the simple, straight to the point version would be the process of creating the new, but that comes in multiple layers. And I believe that journey of innovation begins, it's a mindset of creativity built on the platform of creativity. Now, the challenge that happens in organizations when it comes to leadership in regards to innovation is the word creativity or even imagination can intimidate people because some people consider themselves, well, I'm not the creative type, therefore I can't contribute, or therefore I can't come up with new ideas and innovation strategies. And it's literally just a mindset built on, I am willing to explore, experiment, tap into my inner child, take risks, and let's just try stuff. And it's through that collaboration and exchange that they suddenly start to realize, oh, I do have something to contribute. But also leaders have to empower their teams to feel confident to jump into that sand pit, so to speak, and play and take risks and just see what comes out of it without any specific expectations or guidelines, just a free-for-all. Let's just explore. And that's where innovation begins.
I love the creativity aspect of it because creativity is innovation, right? And you were part of Cirque du Soleil, which is also a really fascinating story that you have. And you talk about the culture and how you received that warm welcome. So let's first talk about that. Why is culture so important? And what responsibility do we have as leaders to set that tone?
Well, culture basically defines your company. It defines your brand. It's the very foundation that you are going to either be successful or not. And companies that have what I'm going to call anemic cultures that are haphazard and not designed and carefully, there's no strategy behind it, tend to find that they fail. Because unless you guide your team from day one, this is how we do things, this is our expectations, these are our standards, it's very hard for somebody to come on board and fit in to what's already been established. And in terms of that first impression, that warm welcome, I remember at Cirque du Soleil, and this is where a lot of companies, leaders fail. They've gone through the onboarding process and most new employees will relate. You arrive at your job on the first day and you're intimidated, you're afraid, you don't know really how it functions. And then you're walked into your office in your cubicle and you're given the quick tour and then, all right, good luck. And then you're left there. And it's not a very nice feeling. And so from day one, you have set them up for not necessarily failure, but you haven't set them up for success. At Cirque du Soleil, I remember specifically, they came and picked me up at the airport. They greeted me. They made me feel valued. And really, that's what it comes down to. Invest in your team and your employees from day one. Make them feel valued, make them feel relevant, make them feel significant. From that point moving forward, you will get more out of them because we are emotional beings, and the first impression sets the tone. They greeted me, they made me feel welcome, they showed me the ropes, they let me know that I could ask them questions if I needed help and support, and that boosted my confidence, and I was then able to thrive from day one. So in terms of leaders, make sure that you invest and take the time to make your team feel comfortable from day one.
I love the emotion part of it because empathy is such a great part of leadership. And I know we didn't kind of cover this in our pre-question, but why is empathy so important for leadership? Like, how do you show empathy equally amongst your team?
It's a very good question. Empathy is a very, very powerful tool. And that now gets into the realm of what is more popularly considered as emotional intelligence. So empathy is putting yourself in the shoes of the other person. That means you are understanding their emotional state. Now, that doesn't mean that through empathy, I have to necessarily agree with you and comply and do what you request. You mentioned about leadership and in terms of culture. Having empathy doesn't mean that I can accommodate everybody's needs and expectations. Having empathy means I've taken the time to sit down with you and listen. And when I mean listen, I don't just mean, blah, 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 selectively listening. I mean actively listening and listening with empathy, which means I truly understand your pain points. If I truly understand your pain points and you feel that I have listened and heard you, you've already achieved half of the battle. You've already won the battle because I relate to your problems. I understand you. And if I genuinely understand, I will then do the best that I can to help you. That doesn't mean you're going to get what you want, but just the fact that you feel heard and understood already is a part of the conflict resolution problem. So leaders that have empathy actually empower their teams because they feel, again, it goes back to the emotional part of feeling valued, heard, and understood. So it's crucial for leaders to have empathy because a lot of leaders, it's what we do. We listen actively. Now, active listening is highly effective. However, there is a slight downfall with active listening. So I can have a conversation with you right now, Angie. You are either one of my team members, you are my top employee or my worst employee, or you are a customer. And I've actively listened to you and I've heard everything that you've said. I've done all the right things. I've made eye contact. I've leaned in. I've taken notes. I've actively listened. But if I don't care about what you just shared with me, what value can I truly bring to you? So active listening is great, but we want to encourage leaders to listen with empathy. So active listening is good. Empathetic listening is one step higher. Go back to your question about diversity and where does CERC find their talent and how does that relate to maybe the business world? So obviously there are endless third parties that we can entertain. I mean, there's a ZipRecruiter, Career Builder. I think even now Facebook has a job search tool. There's LinkedIn. So these are sort of more standard ways of finding talent and it gives you access to the most qualified talent. And I do qualified in air parentheses. Because a lot of leaders, a lot of companies will hire based on credentials, ability. CERC goes a little bit beyond because they want people with the right mindset. I remember auditioning for Cirque du Soleil. I was not the best performer there. There were Olympic gymnasts, national champions, and I was some kid who kind of grew up on the streets and who done some dance and some ballet and some acrobatics, but I wasn't as good as the others. However, my defining or my saving grace was that I was adaptable. I was hungry to learn. I was like litmus paper. And that's what they were looking for. People who can adapt and fit the mindset of the culture. Because I can teach you a skill. It's very hard to make you shift in your mindset. And so leaders don't always be preoccupied with, well, they've got a degree in this. What is their mindset? Will they complement, if not enhance, the business objectives? And what value will they bring to the other team members? So it's not just the credentials. And of course, Cirque du Soleil, they invest time in finding the right people. They search worldwide. Not every company can do that. But take the time. If you're going to rush a hire and you're going to rush the onboarding process, the chances are you haven't set them up for success. So invest in taking the time to onboard and then to train. That's crucial. Take the time to train the right people that you found. And then the next element I want to quickly add to that, Once you've found the right people that fit within your culture, that you've trained, then get out of their way. Let them give you the best of them. And that's how you optimize talent.
You have so many examples of adaptability in your book, and I just love it because as someone who talks about change often and embraces it, I think that's so important. And, you know, Cirque du Soleil, you talked about that as a real life example, and you were on Mystere as your first show, correct?
Correct, yes.
Perfect. That was the first show I ever saw from Cirque du Soleil too, which is fascinating.
You loved it, right?
I did. I was so taken. The imagination was out of control. I loved it. But you talk about the struggle of putting that show together, moving it from Montreal to Las Vegas, and how people had to pivot and change, and even up to opening day. So what do you remember from the leadership as they helped guide you through these pivots? You have very animated stories about the leads, but what is something that was really great, but something that may have hindered you at the same time?
Without giving away the secret sauce, because the through line, the story that I'm going to quickly share a part of right now is the main through line of the book, Innovation Mindset. But in a nutshell, and you talked about Mr. how we had to pivot. First of all, it was the first time Cirque du Soleil had done a show on that scale. It was their first resident or permanent show. Secondly, all the other shows had been done in a tent. And now, so here we are in a fixed theater that has been built specifically for this show. And for Cirque, it was a learning curve. And so a big part of the exploration that's exactly it. You explore your opportunities. You see what potential lies within the limitations. And oftentimes companies are so focused on, well, we can't do this, and they list the reasons. Cirque was just, well, let's focus on what we can do. And the whole process was a trial and error, play by play. Oh, that doesn't work. But if we add this, would that work? And the big takeaway was that one day before the opening of the show, we'd been rehearsing for a year, intense training, 6 days a week. And here we are. We've traveled this journey. And the last rehearsal before opening night, December 24th, 1993, Treasure Island Hotel, the director at the last minute then says something that blew our minds. He said, he has this thick French accent. He said, "Forget everything you have learned. We start all over." And we're like, he's lost his mind. He's lost it. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Up until that point, Mystère had been dark. It was actually a very boring show. And rumor has it that Steve Wynn and Elaine Wynn, who were the then owners of Treasure Island Hotel, didn't want to allow us to open. They were going to shut down the project. And so at the last minute, there is this 180 U-turn to reinvent everything that we had done. Now that takes courage. As a leader, a part of leadership is courage to understand that, oh, this might not be the right direction. Let's change for the good. I'm not promoting being reckless. It was a calculated change. We've gone down the wrong path for a year. And if we keep going down this path, we won't reach our destination. Let's change. So at the last minute, everything had to be changed. The choreography, the music, the costumes, it all had to be changed. Now, this is the only way that change like this can happen. And it goes back to culture and leadership. By default of the way that they had trained us and prepared us for the show, we were on board. We bought into the mission and the vision. And therefore, we gave it everything that we had to make this seemingly crazy change work. If your team doesn't buy into what you are doing, good luck inspiring change. It's not going to work. You've got to inspire your team with a strong vision, mission that is filled with passion, focus, clear direction, and your team will be on board, and it will end up being smooth sailing. There's a beautiful quote from Robin Sharma in regards to change. He says that change is hard at first, messy in the middle, gorgeous at the end. But it takes courage to get through that messy part.
It's like a point of transformation. And you do talk about that in the book. You talk about how some things are just inevitable, like disagreements, misunderstandings, even innovation, right? But transformation is optional. So if you have staff like that, and you just said you have to get them to buy in, how do you do that?
That's another great question. So a lot of leaders and modern leadership has been shifting for the last 20, 30 years. Older leadership was based on power. I'm the boss and I have the power, and therefore you do as I tell you. and modern leadership is shifting unto itself, and it's more becoming about how do I empower my team? How do I inspire my team rather than tell them what to do? And telling people what to do is a form of manipulation. They don't want to do it, and then they resist, and then resentment builds. So the best way to get your team to either buy into something or to shift, because like you mentioned, change is inevitable. Transformation is a choice. Therefore, if it's a choice, they can say yes or no. So the objective as a leader is to inspire your team. And there's a great example by Jonathan Haidt, a psychologist, and he uses the example of a rider on top of the elephant. Now, most people would think, well, the rider's in control because he has the power, he's holding the reins, and therefore he can tell the elephant where to go. That works most of the time. But when the elephant, which represents the subconscious mind, and the rider represents the conscious mind, so if the subconscious doesn't want to change, good luck getting the elephant to move in a direction that it doesn't want to when it weighs 6 tons more than you do. You can't make that happen. So you have to inspire the elephant to want to go down a certain path. So it's not about manipulation and mandates and company policy. It's about understanding your team, what motivates them, what's in it for them. It's not always about what's in it for the company, what's in it for your team. And also when you involve them in the decision-making and the process, they take ownership in that. And when they take ownership, they're going to nurture it like their little baby. And that's how you inspire transformation and change.
So you're giving that power over to your team, but let's talk about diversity and inclusion. But every individual might have a different motivation. So how do you get that collaborative thought to be part of that? How do you get them to work together?
Collaboration is very complicated. And, people will use that quote, there is no I in team. And this is something that Michael Jordan apparently once said during the training when somebody said to him, there's no I in team. And his answer was, yes, but there is an I in win. So it's just a shift of perspective. But in terms of collaboration, first of all, leaders have to clearly communicate and let their team members know, I want to hear your ideas. We need to hear your ideas. Now, this is where most leaders end, or I'm going to use the word kill, collaboration and innovation. Somebody offers an idea and somebody will say, oh, that's a great idea, but, and then they tell you why your idea won't work. So if I've contributed an idea 10 times and you keep telling me no, or that it's not going to work, what happens? I stop contributing. Going back to the Cirque du Soleil process, that doesn't mean they had to entertain each and every one of our ideas, but at least they made us feel like they had considered it. And sometimes they would be like, you know what? I don't know how that's going to work, but let's give it a try. And what happens is, if you allow people to collaborate, a seemingly bad idea becomes a better idea, turns into a good idea, becomes the right idea. It's a process. But leaders have to be very strategic in enabling people to collaborate. That doesn't mean, again, a free-for-all and that you can allow superstars to do as they please. It's still all within the framework of this is our objective, here's our mission, here's our vision, and this is how our culture works here. So it's always within that framework. It's not a free-for-all.
Perfect. Leadercast practices the yes and philosophy. So I appreciate when I hear other people make sure that's a leadership point. Part of the reason we had you today is our theme in May is innovation. So we've built this story about how positive disruption can lead to creativity and innovation. How do you see companies right now, especially in the environment we are in, innovating and creating right now? Do you have any examples for us?
Well, everybody is now going through a drastic and immediate almost sense of urgency in order to adapt to everything that's happened overnight. So one of the key factors of innovation is a sense of urgency. And going back to the Cirque du Soleil example of the night before, we had no choice but to focus, dive in with conviction. This is what we're going to do, and we're going to give it everything that we have, and we're going to change. So right now, I think what's happening is a lot of companies are switching to going to online platforms. They're now having to understand it's opening up a new door for a different way of communicating, which means that now people are working from home. This is one of the key things that I think is going to happen in terms of the future. People have gotten, they've struggled with the transition to working from home and doing conference calls and using Zoom and other platforms like Uber conferences and things like that. People have now reached the comfort level of, I kind of enjoy working from home now. And I think that's what's going to happen in the future. They're going to shift to what countries like the Netherlands, Sweden, and Denmark are doing, where they've actually shortened the work week. I believe Denmark and Sweden have a standard format of a 30-hour week. And so if people can work from home and you delegate and leaders give them more autonomy and freedom to take initiatives and make decisions, it frees people's time up that they can now have a healthier work-life balance. I'm working from home. I can spend more quality time with my family. I'm a happier employee. As a happier employee, you're going to get more out of me because I'm energized, I'm motivated, I'm enthusiastic. And so I hope that companies, when all is said and done and the dust settles, don't suddenly go back to the formats that we had where you're going to come in and work at the office and I'm going to micromanage you and I'm going to tell you what to do. This is the opportunity for leaders to step back and really empower their people to do what they do best. Quickly adding to that, a quick tip for everybody when you're doing Zooms, and if this is the way of the future, make sure that you don't have what's called screen fatigue, where you are asking your team members to spend too much time on conference calls. It's the same with meetings. Meetings are sometimes too long. So optimize your time by minimizing the time that you spend in meetings, either virtual or not.
Absolutely. And bringing up the time factor, having more time allows people to be more creative, possibly. And you mentioned again that creativity is a mindset. A lot of people will say you're an artist, you're creative, but in reality, is that always the case? Can you tell me a little bit about that and how you're expressing your creativity these days? I've seen you do some handstands and things like that. So how are you being creative these days?
Well, first, before I get to how I'm being creative, going back to the mindset thing, there is a difference. So I actually happen to paint. I used to be an artist, a painter, as a dancer, acrobat, as an actor, as an author. That's artistry. And a lot of people think they're not creative because they're confusing that. They think, oh, creative people are artists. They create art. That's not true. Lawyers are creative. Accountants are creative. At least I hope everybody's accountant out there is creative. So it's not always about creating art. So if people let go of the concept that, oh, I'm not artistic, but I can be creative. Creativity is about problem solving, coming up with new ideas. And so how am I being creative without necessarily creating art? I like to tap into my inner child. That's where our superpower really lies. When we can be creative and just free to play. So when I travel a lot. And when I'm at the airport, I look at an escalator, and most people view the escalator as, well, I step on it and I go up. I view the escalator as something to play on. If that's how I become creative, I tap into my Cirque du Soleil reserves. I will still do the odd handstand here and there. As I'm writing blogs, I try new ways. As I create promotional marketing materials, I constantly explore and try. And so that's how I remain creative. And that's what I encourage other people to do, is to be childlike and continually play. And through playing is how you discover and drive innovation.
And you're really good about showing playing on Instagram. So for those who want to see the creative in you, and that actually leads me to a next question. I assume this has to do with playing and the childhood-like attitude, but what's with the red noses? I see audiences wear them. I see you wear them. Can you tell us a little bit about those red noses?
Yes, I would love to. So it's somewhat become my signature. And the thing with creativity and innovation, it's not about reinventing the wheel. So I've taken the concept of the red nose, which I didn't invent. It's something that is sort of associated with circus. It's something that Patch Adams used many years ago, I believe in the 70s, when he would use the red nose to try and make children laugh. And through laughter, we heal and we open our souls to, and that's what the red nose does. Now, of course, there's a way of setting this activity up for it to be successful that I cannot disclose. But what happens when I get people to wear the red noses in large groups, is all the lessons that I've taught about creativity, inhibition, being forward thinking, being open-minded, and leaving your ego outside. When they put on the red nose, instantly all those things happen. They start to smile. They forget their ego. They start to be childlike. Their inhibitions go out the window. And all of a sudden, they are much more able to, one, connect with their fellow colleagues, because now I'm smiling. My guard is down. We're connecting. We become relatable. Through relatability, we can now exchange ideas with an open mind. It inspires collaboration. That red nose is such a magical impact when I use it at keynotes and trainings. It's really a very powerful thing. And again, it's just simply about being childlike, letting go of your ego, forgetting your inhibitions and being free to express. So for people who are working online or in their homes right now, or still in virtual offices, it can be a red nose. It can be a hat. It can be a silly scarf that you wear. Just find props around the home that make you feel a little bit more childlike. It's like when we put on a mask, all of a sudden we become a bit more daring. That's really what the red nose does.
I love it. And it definitely brings a smile to my face. I'm having a hard time not smiling for all of this. So I just have one last question. This is the Leadercast podcast. Our mission is to fill the world with leaders worth following. So I have to ask, in your opinion, what makes a leader worth following?
Ooh, wow. The ultimate question, that's a really, really good question. What makes a leader worth following? I think there are several character traits that makes a leader worth following. I think vulnerability is one. As a leader, if I'm too perfect and too almighty and I separate the distance between my people and me, I now become intimidating. By being intimidating, I can inhibit growth. I can inhibit expression. So vulnerability is a really important thing. For leaders, share stories of your failures. Share stories of when you made a mistake, because it is all okay. And it's a crucial, integral part of innovation, failure. I'm going to use several quotes in this. I love Michael Jordan. And in terms of failure, it should be a part of your cultural DNA. It is okay to fail. In fact, you should invite people to fail. And I'm going to add something to that. It's about failing quickly and failing forward. And Michael Jordan's quote about failure is this. He says, I've missed over 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost more than 300 games. 26 times I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed. I've failed over and over again in my life, and that is why I succeed. So failure is a part of growth, innovation, expansion, scaling, and people have to. Now, there's a fine balance between, like in Cirque du Soleil, we failed in practice. We explored and trained in practice with very specific guidelines. There's a crash mat, there's a spotter, we experiment. The objective is not to fail in the show. So the failure becomes that's a part of your market research. In meetings, that's where you explore. So the failure doesn't become in the execution or delivery of your product or service. It's in the preparation to creating a product or a service. In terms of leadership, there's another quote I want to share. John Quincy Adams, and this for me sums up what a leader is. John Quincy Adams says, if your actions inspire others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, you are a leader. So if you can inspire your team to thrive, to become better, to grow, to become leaders unto themselves, then you are a leader.
That is beautiful. I don't know if you have left anything out that you want to give other nuggets, because that was just so perfect.
Yeah, just very quickly, in a nutshell, what I want to say is going back to tapping into the Cirque du Soleil thing and leadership. Over the years, we had different, what's called artistic coordinators who helped us maintain the integrity of the show. And this happens a lot in sports. You can see one team thrive under a great manager, and then the next season they suck because either the manager has lost it or they bring in another manager. Leadership is crucial to the success of any organization, any company, any startup. And leadership is also something, we are all leaders. That can be at home as a parent. It can be as a friend. It can be as a role model, as a mentor for somebody. But ultimately, we are all leaders, and the objective is to turn other people into leaders that are better than we were.
I could not have said it better myself. Vital, thank you so much for joining us today on this podcast. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did.
I really did. Great questions. Thank you. And keep up with the amazing work and the difference that you are making. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. This is Bart, and I wanted to take a minute to tell you about our friends at Sweetfish Media. According to research from Edelman and LinkedIn, almost 60% of decision makers said that thought leadership led them to awarding business to an organization. Sweetfish Media helps marketing teams turn their executives into industry thought leaders. Learn more by visiting sweetfishmedia.com/leadercast.
Thanks for tuning in to the Leadercast podcast. To ensure that you never miss an episode, subscribe to the show in your favorite podcast player.